tonight. The federal budget proposes billions in spending and cuts to the public sector. The Riders make final preparations for Saturday's Western Final. And how a chance run-in reunited a Saskatchewan man with his unique food truck.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Tuesday, November 4th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams. Thank you for joining us. The federal government has introduced its budget, the first under Prime Minister Mark Carney. It will drive up the deficit with what the Liberals call generational investments. Kate McKenna reports on the spending and the cuts.
The Carney government's first budget hits the reset button after Donald Trump's re-election.
Mr. Speaker, when our steel, aluminum, forestry, auto, and agriculture industries were hit by U.S. tariff and trade disruptions, we did not stand by and wait for the storm to pass.
It's a budget with big spending and big cuts. There will be $280 billion in capital investments over 5 years, targeting infrastructure, productivity, defense, and home building.
This budget is guided by the strong conviction that Canada must remain a nation of builders, of infrastructure and of innovation, of trust in public institutions and hope for generations to come.
But it also includes $60 billion in cuts, including 40,000 public sector jobs over 5 years.
We need to bring back the civil service to a more sustainable level.
It also includes a massive deficit, coming in at over $78 billion, still less than some economists predicted.
The government's books remain sustainable. I suspect that pretty much any other G7 country would happily trade places with Canada right now with our deficit number, including the United States.
All of this happening with Trump's tariffs and aggressive industrial policy in the background, and Canada's own economy lagging.
Prime Minister Carney may have been handed one of the worst decks to play cards with. These are some of the worst cards you can imagine.
But Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says that's no excuse for a deficit this big.
Today, the Liberals have introduced the most costly and largest budget deficit in history outside of COVID. The cost of this Liberal budget will drive up the cost of food, housing, and everything else that Canadians buy.
Mark Carney will need to sell this budget to Canadians, but also to the opposition parties. In a minority parliament, at least some opposition MPs will need to support it or abstain in order for the budget to pass. If it's voted down, that could trigger an election before the end of the year. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
And with such a huge new deficit, winning over the opposition will be a challenge. You heard there from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who's demanding a more affordable economic plan, saying Canadians have made enough sacrifice. And only one other party leader says he's willing to even consider backing the budget.
I hardly see how, after having met with our caucus tonight, we could vote in favor of this budget. Those $78 billion of deficit, whatever tricks they want to invent, there's nothing of what we did ask in the budget.
I can tell you that New Democrats are going to take the time to study this budget. We're going to consult with stakeholders. We're going to talk to Canadians, particularly working Canadians, and review this budget to see if this budget passes our lens of whether it works for working Canadians.
And the federal government is also investing $5 billion over 7 years into trade diversification, creating a push to share our products with the rest of the world amid tariff disputes. Experts here say that will strengthen Saskatchewan's economy.
The push to open sort of these new trade corridors opens our products, such as our canola, our uranium, our potash, to new markets, and sort of allows us to make the most of these investments that the federal government is attempting to spur that productivity.
The budget also includes $370 million for a new biofuel initiative, Farmers CBC spoke to say that will also create more of a market for canola and oil seeds. The Saskatchewan NDP is calling on the provincial government to reinstate a tuition support program for Ukrainian students. The provincial subsidy allows Ukrainian refugee students to pay domestic tuition at places like the U of R and U of S instead of international rates. This only applies to those who came to the province under the Canada-Ukraine Authorization for Emergency Travel. But now some students say if the agreement is not renewed, they won't be able to afford tuition.
If this program genuinely gets cut, the price is going to be absolutely ridiculous. $40,000, $50,000 a year. People who flee the war typically don't have just $40,000 lying around. It's just not how it works. We're hoping that this government accepts the idea of continuing this program. We want to see actions. We want to see this program continued.
The program is set to expire on March 31st. Advanced Education Minister Ken Cheveldayoff says the province will review the program as it prepares next year's budget. The Crown has rested its case at the trial for the man charged with second-degree murder in the death of Misha Pavelick. The 19-year-old was stabbed and killed at a campground near Regina Beach during a graduation party almost 20 years ago. Aaliyah Marco Omene has the latest.
The Crown has called about 30 of its 50 scheduled witnesses to make its case. The final 4 testified Monday at Regina's Court of King's Bench. The accused was 17 in 2006 when Pavelick was killed, so he can't be named. Witnesses remembered where a night of innocent drinking turned to violence. Many also testified Pavelick had been involved in 2 separate altercations. After that, testimony splintered when it came to who had a weapon that night and who used it to kill Pavelick. The Crown has always said it did not expect someone would testify that they actually saw the stabbing occur, but it believed the evidence presented would prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the accused was the one who killed Pavelick. The Crown is planning to seek an adult sentence if he is found guilty. Meanwhile, the defense told the court it will not be presenting evidence and that the accused has agreed with this course of action. Justice Catherine Dawson says she has a lot to consider in order to come up with a charge. The jury was dismissed Tuesday and will return to court Thursday, where both lawyers will present their closing statements. On Friday, it will start on deliberations to reach a final verdict. Aaliyah Marco Omene, CBC News, Regina.
A man's death in Regina over the weekend is now being treated as a homicide. Police were called to this home on 12th Avenue near Winnipeg Street early Saturday morning. They found a 19-year-old man with a gunshot wound. He was declared dead at the scene. Police say they're not sharing the man's name at the request of his family. They're also asking people in the area to check their properties for a gun believed to have been involved in the incident. The man's death is the 10th homicide in Regina so far this year. And Regina police are also investigating 3 reports of metal objects found inside candy gathered by kids trick-or-treating on Halloween. The city's acting police chief says she doesn't believe the cases are connected. One came from Fairways West, another from Glen Elm, and a third from Norman View West. All of them were described as needle-like items found inside chocolate bars. Davies says all 3 reports have been verified by her office. Still, she says the public shouldn't panic.
And securing any additional evidence will be important for us to be able to figure that out. And then just the fact that it is spread out throughout the city. You know, if it was in one specific area, we had multiple reports, then clearly that would be something that would be a red flag for us. But because it has been spread out, you know, I think that leads us to believe that maybe it was something more manufacturing.
For now, the case is ongoing, but Davies says if you come across something awry with your children's candy, call police and keep the evidence. Regina's Pasqua Hospital has a new staff member, but it's not a person, it's a robot. This is the Da Vinci Robotic surgical system. The technology allows surgeons to perform minimally invasive procedures using a remote control. It's already being used in 2 locations at St. Paul's Hospital in Saskatoon. The SHA says the robotic system doesn't replace doctors, but helps them perform better.
So all of these things together leads to a lot of advantages for surgery. Includes surgery that's less invasive. Typically, there's less blood loss. People have less post-op pain, decreased opioid usage post-operatively. It's shorter stays in hospital, less readmission rates, and overall it means a faster recovery for our patients.
The Da Vinci system was launched at Pasqua Hospital in September and has already been used to perform almost 20 surgeries. The system costs about $2 million a year to run, and when it's fully operational, it's expected to help with 300 procedures a year. Well, how is this for November 4th? T-shirts and sunshine in Saskatoon. It was the perfect day for Mitch Regier and his kids Ramsey and Ronan to get outside with their dog. Lots of people likely enjoying the sun and warmth, but that is not going to last. We are in for some weather whiplash ahead, and that could include some accumulating snowfall very soon. I'll have the wintry details in your forecast after the break. A gathering in Saskatoon is bringing together frontline workers, academics, and others working on First Nations language revitalization. Canada's Indigenous Languages Commissioner says about half of all Indigenous languages spoken in Canada are endangered or critically endangered.
So no language is safe in Canada, so we need to create a method of teaching Indigenous language immersion teachers like they do in Hawaii and in New Zealand. If we don't do that, the floor will fall out from under us.
This is the 20th First Nations Language Keepers Gathering. It continues Wednesday at Prairie Land Park. A Saskatchewan chainsaw artist has constructed a giant carving of Gord Downey of the Tragically Hip. And it's not the first time he's made a life-size carving of a famous Canadian. The artist behind it says this carving comes from his experience of losing a loved one.
My family bought me a chainsaw 32 years ago, and for bucking wood on our acreage, because we subsidized our heat with firewood. I never did cut any wood. I actually went right to sculpting, and that's actually where my first sculpture is that in Pascapoo Park in Rimbey, Alberta. I started painting canvas in 1987 when I broke my foot on the oil rigs, and so I took up painting, and from about 93 is when I started sculpting. So the difference between sculpting and painting is adding and subtracting. You add to your canvas and you subtract from your wood. Gord Downey was, I went there, and that's actually 5 trees put together. The construction of the base and putting everything together took 5 days alone. This thing is 15 feet 8 inches tall. That's one of the biggest challenges for southern Saskatchewan. You do get a lot of really extreme weather down there. Exactly a year prior, I did Don Cherry. But whenever it came to Gord Downey, it's like I said, it comes close to my heart. You know, I lost my wife 9 years ago, and she had breast cancer, and then it masticated into brain cancer. And then Gord Downey got brain cancer. And you know, I've already had a year into loss and into the big effect of losing somebody. So it kind of, that's one of the things that tied me to it, other than his music. I've been listening to him since he started, and he was such an icon. And so in a way, I took care of 2 different aspects of life. First of all, to bring focus to this man that was incredible. Like I said, he gave a lot to Canada. And it also was a personal getting past loss. And with art, it's one of the things that you can give. It's something that you pull from yourself. And so if you can put the emotion of that into your art, then you have some real art. I never did this for the money. I actually financed the whole thing myself. I worked all winter and then spent 17 days. And thank goodness I have an awesome partner down there. But I actually sculpted out of my mind. And so there wasn't a lot of sketches. There's just a matter of putting these pieces together to create that. And I listened to the Tragically Hip all the way from Drayton Valley all the way to Morlack, Saskatchewan, and then the whole time was there. And I mean, I was totally engrossed with both the visuals and also the music. And what better to hang out with this Tragically Hip and chainsaw.
Well, the end of another beautiful day in Saskatoon, maybe a day where you chose to take a run on the new Broadway Bridge, as you can see there in our shot of beautiful downtown Saskatoon. And you had some nice sunshine in Saskatoon as well. As we'll take a look at our satellite radar, you can see high pressure has been keeping the clouds away, not just for Saskatoon, but for a lot of the province. The last of that cloud cover and even some rain and flurries earlier moving out of the province. But that high pressure, even though it's going to stay with us overnight into early Wednesday, it moves out early into Wednesday sort of afternoon, and that's going to quickly allow some cloud cover to develop and bring forward this Alberta Clipper out of the Alberta foothills. That's going to start with likely rain mixed with snow, sort of in a line from Kindersley and Saskatoon down to Regina, maybe even as far south as the Estevan area. The northern extent of that system then changes over to snow as that falls through the northern grain belt. Another area of moisture then develops through southern Saskatchewan as we get into Thursday afternoon. Mostly rain at this point, but then that kind of changes over to some wet snow as we get into Thursday evening before that system departs. That's not the end of it, though. Another system going to spawn out of Alberta, which will bring some messy mix of weather as we get into Friday. So this is sort of a worst-case scenario model, I think. It shows mostly the northern grain belt possibly getting a little more than 10 centimeters of snow. But at most, I think everyone's sort of in for maybe 5 to 10 at the most, and this might be shifted a little bit further south as we get through the next couple of days. We'll have a better idea Wednesday where this moisture is going to land. For the rain, which will mostly, again, be through southern Saskatchewan, I think at most maybe 5 to 10 millimeters there. Nothing too extreme in terms of the rain, and nothing too extreme in terms of the wind either, although we will see those gusts start to pick up Wednesday evening going into Thursday, and especially for southern Saskatchewan, as that next system starts to roll around, gusts could be maybe 50 to 60 kilometers an hour as we get into Thursday afternoon. So for Regina, that looks something like this. Not too bad at 7 degrees Wednesday, but keep in mind that cloud cover building in through the day. Then we have the chance of some rain and snow Thursday before flurries on Friday. That will be a chilly western final on Saturday that you'll need to bundle up for. Saskatoon, again, I think it's mostly snow for you folks, and maybe 2 to 4 centimeters is what I'll put you at for now. We'll see again Wednesday where we land. Lingering flurries on Friday before things start to clear out as we get into Saturday, Sunday, although we spend the day below the freezing mark and then back above freezing and back to some sunshine for Monday and Tuesday. Well, in 2015, Kenny Chaplin had to sell his hot dog food truck. It's something that has been out of sight and out of mind for years. That is, until a chance run-in and a simple Google search for a photo reunited Chaplin with the nostalgic vehicle.
We got to put sesame seeds up there. We got to put relish up there.
I was up at Nest Creek Music Festival, and this girl comes up to me, and she says, I know you. I said, how do you know me? She says, because you used to have the hot dog truck in Regina. And my daughter turns to me and goes, what? And I'm like, oh, God. And then I explained it to Ruby, and Ruby, because she's 14 and smart, she just Googles hot dog truck in Saskatchewan. And lo and behold, up pops Grant's image.
Headed northeast and was coming over a dirt hill, and then I just started to see it, just this little top of what I looked like a hot dog, a very big hot dog. And as I got over the rise, sure enough, that's what it was. It was a very large, like 10-foot hot dog spanning the top of this old food truck. And I knew I had to stop and take a photo, of course. You can't pass that up. And I think it was like a year later, Kenny reached out and he said, hey, where did you see that hot dog truck? And I'm wondering who this person is and why they care so much. And turned out it was his. And he shared pics with his young daughter there with him.
So Ruby and I took a road trip out, and we're cresting the hill, just as Grant said, and I swear to God, Tori, I start to cry, because sometimes things from your past that were good come back to you for good reason at a good time, and this was perfect timing for me. I have great expectations for it. I've got a spot in Chamberlain right on that strip. You know how the 4-lane comes down to a 2-lane, and you've got traffic from Moose Jaw, Saskatoon, and Regina coming through that little strip there. And people, they don't want to stop and go into a restaurant, sit down, wait, and eat food. Here's a mobile food truck that you can literally, the spot I have, you literally just drive up to the window.
Well, the Western Final at Mosaic Stadium is just days away, but there are still tickets available for the game. Just over 3,000 of them to be exact. The Riders are currently offering a buy 3, get 1 deal for tickets in order to entice fans to Saturday's game. More than 30,000 tickets have been sold so far, but at least 34,000 need to be sold to sell out the stadium. We'll have more on how the Riders are preparing for the big game after the break. Welcome back. It is officially Western Final Week for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The Riders will face the BC Lions, who defeated the Calgary Stampeders with a last-second field goal in last week's Western semifinal. The Riders were in the exact position last year, although this time around the game is at home. Quarterback Trevor Harris says he cherishes these moments.
It's awesome. It really is awesome. It's one of those things that is my first year here, we won the East when I was in Toronto and kind of just took it for granted. I was like, man, we didn't win the East. Or in 13 we won in the East, and you don't win the East for a while, and then come over to the West. It's the same thing. It's one of those things where it's really nice to be able to kind of let some guys get healthy. You got to get past the jealousy of the other teams getting to play the week before, but obviously they're vying for the spot there, and you just get an extra week of prep and use it wisely.
Some key riders return to the practice field from injury on Tuesday. That list includes Roland Milligan, Marcus Sales, and Dante Myers. Saturday's Western Final kicks off at Mosaic Stadium at 5:30. Well, in advance of that messy weather system, we can expect a chilly Tuesday into Wednesday overnight. Temperatures dropping well into the minuses across south and central, feeling like minus 10 to 15 in a lot of locations as we continue to see clear skies for the most part overnight and fairly light winds. Those temperatures have been chilly actually throughout the day, especially in far northern Saskatchewan, and we may even drop a little bit further than this. Wouldn't be surprised if there's some minus double digits, especially closer to the northern border. We'll start the day with some cloud cover in the far north. Temperatures for a lot of us below freezing. For the Churchill region, we may get a degree or two above the freezing mark, but I think for the far north, we'll be spending the day, again, hovering around that sort of -5 mark. For south and central, we are starting on that chilly note after a chilly night, but things warm up fast. We're above the freezing mark already by the noon hour, but as that cloud cover starts to build in, as we get into the afternoon, those temperatures kind of stay right where they are, although for most of us, above seasonal for this time of year. But we will watch for that system of rain and snow starting to develop later into Wednesday night. And that is our news for this Tuesday. For more news anytime, you can always head to cbc.ca/sask or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. And of course, you can also download the CBC News app on your smartphone or tablet. Thanks so much for watching.